So thanks everybody for joining us today. We are conducting a series of webinars to explore the UC CAI application form. Today this is one of the regular series in this webinar program. Today we are going to be exploring question number 8, which is about regulatory pathway for technology products. We're not going to take questions during the webinar today. You will have an opportunity to follow up with the presenter afterwards, and we would also recommend that you talk to your mentors and advisors at your center or at your center sites if you do have questions about this. So today we're going to hear from Dr. Chris Sasiela. Chris has been the regulatory specialist for the Office of Translational Alliances and Coordination of the National Heart, Lung, and Blood Institute since 2012. In this role, Chris develops and delivers seminars and workshops related to the design of regulatory strategies for devices, diagnostics, therapeutics, and provides technology-specific advice to biomedical innovators at multiple points throughout the product life cycle. Chris also serves as the NLHBI's regulatory expert on matters related to comparative effectiveness research, new translational technology development, and approval or clearance of advanced technology platforms. Dr. Sasiela earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry from Whittier College and a PhD in pharmaceutical sciences from the University of Maryland School of Pharmacy. Prior to joining the NLHBI, Chris received her early regulatory training at FDA and directed the Regulatory Affairs and Services team for a contract organization that managed over 20 INDs conducted at over 120 sites in 4 different economic regions. So with that introduction, Chris, I'd like to turn it over to you to get started.
Thanks so much, Steve, and thank you so much for calling in today for this installment of the UC CAI Application Advice Webinar Series. Today, as Steve mentioned, we're going to talk about finding regulatory information relevant to your technology development. So the learning objectives for today are that by the end of this presentation, you should be able to answer the following questions about your innovative technology. Where within FDA will your technology be reviewed? What is the expected regulatory pathway for your technology? And what can you predict about the regulatory uncertainties or challenges for your technology? Let's dive right in. To understand where in FDA your technology is going to be reviewed, you need to understand that FDA is a very large organization, but primarily biomedical technologies are reviewed within 3 different centers: the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research, the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, and the Center for Devices and Radiologic Health. The review offices within the Center for Biologics Evaluation and Research are organized primarily by therapeutic modality, and they are the Office of Blood Research and Review, the Office of Vaccines Research and Review, and the Office of Cellular, Tissue, and Gene Therapies. Within each of these offices, there are different products that are reviewed. And so for the Office of Blood Research and Review, blood and blood components used for transfusion, and medical devices and tests used to safeguard the blood supply, blood components, and cellular products are reviewed. Within the Office of Vaccines Research and Review, obviously vaccines are researched, but also so are allergy patch tests and similar types of technologies. And finally, in the Office of Cellular, Tissue, and Gene Therapies, the human tissue for transplantation, cellular products, gene therapy products, and xenotransplantation products are reviewed. There are some exceptions. People often think that monoclonal antibodies or recombinant therapeutic proteins are reviewed by the Center for Biologics. And indeed, originally, as they were being developed, they were. However, in 2002, the review of these specific biologic technologies was moved to the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research. So as you're developing your technology, you may want to keep that in mind. Within the Center for Drug Evaluation and Research, the review offices within the Office of New Drugs are organized generally by disorder or organ system. And the Office of New Drugs is what's called a super office. It's comprised of a number of secondary offices. The Offices of Drug Evaluation 1, 2, 3, and 4, the Office of Antimicrobial Products, and the Office of Hematology and Oncology Products. You may still be wondering where within CDER you would be regulated if you were in simply one of those offices of drug evaluation. So the review divisions within ODE 1, 2, 3, and 4 are listed on this slide. I'm not going to read them all out, but this slide deck and this presentation will be available to you to help you identify where you will be regulated. Within the Center for Devices and Radiologic Health, again, the review offices are generally organized by either disorder or organ system, and there are two primary offices within the center that review biomedical technologies, the Office of Device Evaluation and the Office of In Vitro Diagnostics and Radiologic Health. Within the Office of Device Evaluation, there are a number of review panels, and they are listed here on this slide, ENT standing for ear, nose, and throat. Within the Office of In Vitro Diagnostics and Radiologic Health, again, there are a number of review panels listed here on this slide. And I would hope that by this point, you've been able to identify where within FDA your technology will be reviewed. So we're going to move on to the second learning objective. What is the expected regulatory pathway for your technology? For drugs and biologics, and by that I mean molecules for which the primary intended use of the product is achieved through chemical action or by being metabolized by the body, a new drug development paradigm, including new uses for existing drugs or repurposing of drugs, proceeds through the canonical and well-known paradigm of collecting preclinical data, submitting an investigational new drug application, performing a series of clinical trials, and then applying for either a biological license application, a new drug application, or an abbreviated new drug application to reach the commercial market. To understand more about the scope and span of both the preclinical data required to support your indication or the clinical trials that you may need to perform in order to reach market status, there are a number of databases that are available online. The FDA, through the Freedom of Information Act, makes a lot of information public once a new technology is approved. And the specific databases that are listed on this slide, and all of the databases are listed at the URL at the bottom of the slide, can be very useful for you as you are performing your regulatory research for your new technology. An example would be if you are developing a new small molecule, you might look at the Drugs at FDA database. You can find a drug by either its brand name, its active ingredient, or if you happen to know its marketing application number. You can also just browse by drug name. So if you think it starts with, you can go there and look through the list of approved drugs and click through for additional information. If you are developing a biologic agent, there is a page for licensed biological products with supporting documentation. This listing is in alphabetical order as there are many fewer biological products that have been approved than there are drugs, and so the databases are of different sizes. If you are looking to repurpose a current therapeutic agent, you may want to look through the Orange Book, which is a listing of all approved drug products that have therapeutic equivalence evaluations. And so this can be very useful if you are repurposing something either for a new indication or a new population. More information on how to use approval documentation from similar technologies to understand a likely regulatory path for your technology can be found on one of our NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts, Developing a Target Product Profile. All of the NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts are archived on the NHLBI YouTube channel under a playlist, and the playlist link is listed here on this slide. If you are developing a medical device or a diagnostic assay or a radiologic health technology, you will be proceeding through the medical device pathway. And these are this pathway exists for technologies that do not achieve their primary intended purpose through chemical action or by being metabolized. Medical device regulation is stratified into 3 classes based upon potential risk, and Class 1 are the lowest risk devices, Class 2 are moderate risk devices, and Class 3 are the highest risk devices. For Class 1 or Class 2 devices, a technology may enter the market using either what is called a pre-market notification or a 510K submission, where the new innovator demonstrates substantial equivalence of their technology to a predicate technology, or the technology may enter the market through the 510K exempt pathway, which is a much less rigorous pathway that simply conforms with various controls and standards that FDA has put in place, such as good manufacturing processes and appropriate documentation regulations. If you're developing a high-risk medical device or diagnostic, you may reach market through a pre-market approval, which is a progression path similar to a drug or a biologic path, where you would provide a bolus of information demonstrating your current knowledge of your technology before it has entered humans. You would then proceed through an investigational device exemption application, and if you are cleared to continue your investigation, you would engage in human clinical trials, and you would need to demonstrate the safety and efficacy of your technology for its intended use. You would then submit for approval of that technology. If there is no current technology on the market to which you can claim substantial equivalence, for instance, if you are developing a medical device that is based upon 3D printing or some other sort of very unique manufacturing method or whatnot, new technology, all of the medical apps that have come out have sort of stretched the FDA a little bit also. You may end up using what is called the de novo 510K pathway, which means that there is no predicate technology currently, but you are developing a moderate risk device. And if your technology is appropriate for that, there is a guidance document that FDA has published that can help you understand if your technology would be a good fit. So when you are developing a new medical device or diagnostic, the most important guiding principle to understand is the product class or code for your technology. And CDRH has a product classification database that you can use to identify what that will be for your technology. If you're going to use this, you want to start with very general terms. In this particular instance, I have chosen to simply look at all technologies that have been cleared through the 510K process through the cardiovascular review panel. To do that, I return 212 results. 17 are Class 1, 184 are Class 2, and only 11 are Class 3. So as you can see, the vast majority of technologies that FDA reviews are indeed Class 2. The information that you can get from this search is you will get the product code information, you will get a brief description of the type of technology with links to provide greater detail. And although this particular example that I've put up has only 5 returns per page, you can increase that number so that you're scanning through fewer pages. For 212 results, I would probably choose 50 results per page and just look through 5 pages. As I click through the first product code that was returned for the cardiovascular review panel, I find out a little bit more information about the specific type of technology. I'll find out what device it is, what the regulation number is, what type of submission is required, etc. You could often find in these types of things guidance documents or consensus standards that would help you develop your go-to-market plan. And then you could also use that product code if you know it, but you didn't get to it through the method that I just demonstrated, to search any of the other databases that the Center for Devices and Radiologic Health has developed. So in this case, as you see, it says product code right up there in the corner of the 510K database. However, there are many additional databases that talk about cleared or approved devices. And I encourage you to look at the database that is most appropriate to your technology. So what about combination products? First, let's understand what a combination product is. A combination product is a technology that contains at least two of the following: a biologic, a drug, and a medical device. Having two of the same is not the same as having two different devices. So if you have a technology that combines two different types of drugs, it is still regulated simply as a drug. The rule of thumb for combination product development is that you should plan for the most conservative regulatory approach to rule the regulation and development of your technology. The impact of this being that if your technology includes a new drug or new biologic, and you're using this with a known medical device, that you are likely to proceed through an IND pathway. However, if you're using a known drug or a known biologic agent and you're developing a new device, it's highly probable that you will be proceeding through a device pathway. I mentioned guidance documents a moment ago, and I want to stress them again here because they are extremely important and extremely informative. This calendar year, the FDA compiled a single source database for all of the guidance documents that they have compiled, and the link for that document or for that page is at the bottom of this slide. I like to use this when I am helping clients or applicants with developing their regulatory strategy, because you can use very broad search terms. In this particular case, I used the word pulmonary. And what that did was that filtered down from over 3,300 guidance documents. It pulled it down to 7 entries that contain the word pulmonary. The number of returns updates as you type. So if you only wanted to put down PUL, you might have gotten 11 returns. But as I continued it through to pulmonary, it narrowed down to 7. And an added benefit of this new database is that the links to the documents and the titles of the documents appear as you type at the bottom of the page. So it filters them down and shows them to you. And so you can often find relevant guidance documents in 30 seconds or less. I encourage you to use more than one search term and use very broad search terms because you never know what's going to be out there. Another very active area in biomedical development these days is health information technology, or health IT. And earlier this year, the FDA did finalize their guidance on mobile medical applications. So if that is something that you're considering developing, I encourage you to take a very strong look at that particular guidance document. But they've also been working with a number of other types of technologies. And so I've also put up here general wellness policy for low-risk devices, which is currently in draft form. This would be for people who are perhaps looking to integrate Fitbit data or other activity tracker type data into their technology. If you are developing a health IT solution, you will also want to use the search term software, because FDA has very specific guidance documents about how to validate and document your software development throughout your product life cycle. So finally, I'd like to touch upon what regulatory uncertainties or challenges you can predict for your technology prior to actually developing it. When you're doing this, you want to think about what's different about your technology. Is there something that FDA hasn't seen before? Are you developing a first-in-class pharmaceutical? Are you using a new manufacturing method? Is there no current therapy for the condition or the indication that you are targeting? You also want to think about if there's anything that FDA has seen before. Is there a known adverse event profile? There probably is, because otherwise why would we need a new technology in this field? So you want to keep that in mind also to help you develop your strategy as you move forward. There are, of course, public resources available to you, and for drugs or biologic agents, there are 2 databases in particular that I'd like to call your attention to. The approved risk evaluation and mitigation strategy database is where you can find some information on post-market commitments that companies may have made with FDA as they got approval for their novel technologies. There is also a FDA adverse event reporting system which is updated regularly and from which you can cull information about types of molecules or adverse events that happen with specific technologies that FDA has approved as either drugs or biologics. For devices and diagnostics, there are similarly searchable databases. And again, I'm not going to read all of them, but depending upon the type of technology that you're developing, you may want to take a look. Maybe some of the risks are in manufacturing, and so you might want to take the inspections database. Or there may have been, again, with manufacturing issues, some recall issues. This, in addition to safety data, is the type of risk that you want to be able to predict because FDA, if they know about a risk, will ask you to propose an assessment plan for it. So by this point, you should be able to answer the following questions about your innovative technology. You should be able to understand which branch or division within FDA is going to regulate and review your technology. You should be able to do some research to understand the expected regulatory pathway for your technology. And you should be able to predict some of the regulatory uncertainties or challenges that will pertain to your technology. I thank you for your attention today, and just to be informative, if you are working in cardiovascular, pulmonary hematologic, or sleep disordered research space, please feel free to reach out to me with additional questions. My email address is listed on this slide. And if you're working outside of NHLBI's mission space, you can certainly still reach out to your center leads or program managers. And for additional information about both regulatory research and general commercialization tidbits, please feel free to check out the NHLBI Small Biz Hangouts at the URL listed at the bottom of this slide.
Thanks very much, Chris, for this excellent review of the important points that need to be considered and possibly addressed in the NCAI Common Application Form under question number 8, Regulatory Path. As I mentioned at the beginning of this webinar, we will not be taking questions now, but we do encourage you to reach out to Chris directly if you're working in the heart, lung, and blood space, or reach out to your mentors and advisors that are located within your center or center sites in the NCAI program. Thanks very much, everybody, for attending today.